elites. But a friend of mine, as he put it, he said, those who say it can't be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. And that would be you. That's what we're here for. We, the people, are on the move. On the move. As we saw last week in some 5 million Americans in big cities, in rural counties, in the deep South as well, people rallying to take power back from the power elites. Now that's driving Trump crazy. That's a pretty short ride for him, though. Our secret power is us. Nothing else but us. I think of a little hardware store near my home in Austin, Texas. Not a big box thing, it's just a little local place, but it's a great place because you can go in there and they'll try to figure out the project with you. They'll work with you. They'll even loan you a tool. You can take a tool home and bring it back. And the slogan at Harold's Hardware is, together, we can do it yourself. That's got to be our slogan, isn't it? Together, we can do it ourselves. So sign up. The Texas Progressive Caucus of the Democratic Party has sheets here. Join that caucus. Let's get together and let's put the move in movement again. So don't leave here without signing up. I'll leave you with this thought. It's from Louis Grizzard, the late great Southern humorist. And Grizzard said something that we in the South have always known to be true, and that is that there's a great big difference between being naked and being naked. Being naked means you have no clothes on. Being naked, that means you have no clothes on and you are up to something. So let's all get together and get naked together. Thank you very much for what you're doing. Onward with the movement.
Please welcome to the stage the new chair of the Texas Democratic Party, Kendall Scudder.
Hi, how are you, Fort Worth? My granddaddy was born alone in a wash bucket with no one in the room but his mother on an East Texas farm that had no electricity and no clean water, but for Franklin Roosevelt, Sam Rayburn, the New Deal, and the Democratic Party. He walked to school on cattle pads, alternating the days that he would go because he and his brothers shared a single pair of boots. And he became the first person in our family to read or write. And in 1959, when the droughts hit East Texas, our family lost everything. And we depended on the grand programs of the Great Society proposed by Lyndon Johnson that he created, and he enhanced programs like Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, programs that reduced poverty in this country by 75%. Big, bold, progressive, democratic ideals. As the new chairman of the Texas Democratic Party, that man's grandson, it's my responsibility and your responsibility to make sure that the Democratic Party meets this moment. What does it mean when a 35-year-old from the Progressive Caucus is leading the charge in a state like Texas? It means that we aren't just taking punches anymore, we're going to throw them too. It means that we're going to show up in every corner of this state and build a grassroots working class army ready to fight back and take this state back for the working men and women of Texas. Using big, bold, progressive ideas like the ones we used to be known for. We have to work to disrupt this broken system and unrig this economy that only works for the people at the top while the rest of us at the bottom are left groveling for crumbs. In Texas alone, there are 66 billionaires that control more wealth than 70% of Texans. That is 66 people controlling more wealth than 25,400,000 people. They're using that wealth to buy our politicians, to monetize our government, and to treat our tax dollars as their own personal feeding trough. Don't just take my word for it, just watch them. In January, the richest man in the world was sitting in the Oval Office gouging working people of every social safety net created for them to succeed, while hoarding every penny for himself. His greed knows absolutely no bounds. It's incumbent on all of us to build a working class army across every corner of this state and rise up and fight back against these immoral, selfish sycophants on the American taxpayer enabled by class traders and trust fund babies. For the first time in American history, Trump's budget is designed where the richest people in this country will pay a lower tax rate than the poorest before they even go to an accountant. Billionaires will pay less in taxes than their secretaries, less in taxes than their waiters, less than their top secret cabana boys, less than their golf caddies. Which side are you on, Fort Worth? Are you on the side of the teacher that has a second job as a waitress? Because this society has deemed that college-educated molder of young minds unworthy of a living wage? Are you on the side of the day laborer who starches his shirts before long hours of manual labor to preserve some semblance of human dignity? Or are you on the side of the billionaires, the bankers, and the bootlicking bastards who've chosen to rig this game in their favor at our expense? I will remind everyone here today that this economy functions on the backs of the working men and women of this country. No developer has ever built a building. The working men and women of this country built those buildings. No banker has ever built a school, no politician, a bridge, or a road. It is the working men and women of this country with wild-eyed dreams of putting soccer cleats on their kids who deliver all of this exploited wealth to the people at the top. I need your help if we are going to build a Texas Democratic Party that's worthy of our grassroots. This party does not belong to consultants in D.C. or Austin or to the establishment anymore. This is our party. It belongs to you. I need you to become precinct chairs, to become volunteers, community advocates, and validators who will help us build and grow this movement with me. I need you to send a message to the billionaire class by becoming a grassroots monthly small dollar donor to the Texas Democratic Party to help us build a people-powered movement that's long-lasting and unapologetically on the side of the working men and women of this state. It's a new day in the Texas Democratic Party, and I can't wait to see the party that we all build together to meet this moment. Thank you, Fort Worth, for having me here today. Our next speaker that we have today is a man that needs no introduction in a conversation about people-powered movements. You already know who he is. Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
All right. Hey, I know these are some really dark days, some really tough times. But I got to tell you that I am still so proud to be an American. I still think this is the greatest country on the face of the planet. I still believe what Lincoln said. We are the last best hope of Earth. And I know that every single generation preceding ours has served, has struggled, has sacrificed to bring us through to this day at this moment. And I will be damned if we're the generation that loses it. So I came here tonight, and you came here tonight because we love America, and we're going to save America together. You with me? One of the things that sets us apart from so much of the rest of the world, and almost from the entirety of human history, is the rule of law. This foundational premise that all of us are created equal. And what flows from that is that we can all expect to be treated equally under the law. And to some degree, we still trust our government because that government is also bound by the rule of law. We can only be taxed when our elected representatives choose to tax us. I can only be stopped and detained and arrested and imprisoned if I've broken a law passed by those who've been democratically elected to make those laws in the first place. And I'm owed due process and constitutional protections before they send my ass to El Salvador. Am I right about that? And look, under the laws of this country, the only way we can make war on another country is if we, the American people, say so through our elected representatives in Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, this war that Donald Trump is waging in Iran today is an illegal war. It is an illegal war. And like all wars, we have no idea what is going to happen next. How many people we will kill. How many of our people will be killed. How many billions or trillions of dollars this will cost us over the years and decades that this war might take. And listen, folks, we still can't find the fucking money to help the veterans who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam, who put their lives on the line for this country. Have we learned nothing? If this were the right thing to do, the American people would say so, but you never got a chance because this president chose to break the law, to deliver death and destruction, and perhaps welcome it into the United States as well. So we cannot be silent. We must raise our voices. We must stand to be counted at this moment of truth. We cannot be complicit in yet another American tragedy. We must stop this illegal war. That much is true. That much is true, but so is this. We cannot simply define ourselves by what we are against. If we have any hope of winning political power in Texas, of winning political power in the United States of America, we must be able to tell ourselves, our friends, our families, our fellow Americans, just what it is we are for. How we're going to help those who are hurting, how we're going to right the wrongs that have been committed. It's not enough to say this person screwed you or this person screwed up. We have to also say how we're going to fix a system that has so badly failed almost every American except the wealthiest and the most powerful in this country. So imagine this. Let me paint a picture of the future. Imagine this. A world where the United States does not turn its back on its allies and its friends around the world, but instead works with them to pursue peace, to stop these wars and not to start new ones, that takes seriously this issue of nuclear proliferation in Iran or anywhere else that there is a threat, but that goes beyond that and says, look, why do we have to fear nuclear annihilation in the first place? Why does a madman like Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump for that matter have the power to wipe humanity off this planet? What about a nuclear arms-free future for this country and every human on the planet going forward? And what if, in the future, we really stood for human rights and self-determination of the people of the world? What if, just hear me, this is crazy. What if the United States were no longer complicit in the slaughtering of tens of thousands of children and families in Gaza? What if we used our extraordinary power to convene the countries of this world to ensure that there's a sovereign, independent state for the Palestinian people? And that we work for the safety and the security of all in that region, Israelis, Palestinians, everyone. And what if we brought that same logic back home? And you no longer had to fear a plainclothes federal agent without a badge or without a warrant sweeping you off the streets to detain you, to send you to jail for life in El Salvador? And what if we followed that by rewriting our immigration laws in our own image, with our own values? If you want to come here and work and make this a better country, there should be a safe, legal, orderly path for you to do that. And listen, once and for all, we legalize dreamers. We legalize their parents. We legalize every working American who makes this country great, even greater as U.S. citizens. And what if, here in Texas, where it is harder to cast a ballot and harder to register to vote than any other state in the union, what if in the future we lived in a real democracy where when you have a badass county commissioner like Elisa Simmons, who fairly won her county commissioner's district, even though it was a competitive one, who is now being drawn out of that very district by the modern age Jim Crow thugs on that commissioner's court? What if in the future we had a real democracy where no longer do the politicians pick their voters, it's the other way around? Not only do we have online voter registration, but same-day voter registration and automatic voter registration. We get big money out of politics, no more political action committees, no more corporations. And try this one on for size. What if we replaced Confederate Heroes Day as a state holiday with Election Day as a state holiday in the state of Texas? You with me? For all the teachers, the educators, the administrators, the people who make the future possible, imagine a Texas where you're not working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, where you don't have a governor who's stealing whatever resources remain in your school to funnel them to private schools in this voucher scheme and scandal that he's foisted on this state. What if every working Texan, including teachers, only had to work 1 job and had time to spend with their kids or watch a movie or go to an old 97s concert when they got the time? What if we stopped shoveling trillions of dollars to the wealthiest and most powerful in this country, and instead use it on things that we really need, building millions of homes for people who need it across Texas and across this country, trillions of dollars to fight and cure cancer, trillions of dollars to combat climate change so that our human species can survive generation after generation after generation. We have the resources, we have the power, but until now we have lacked the political will. And lastly, what if, just what if, we had a Democratic Party that fought, and I mean fought, for every single one of these things? They didn't roll over, they didn't bend over, they didn't play dead, they didn't make deals and bargains with Donald Trump and Elon Musk, but they fought for us, every single one of us, regardless of who we are or where we live. Not in 7 swing states, but in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Texas. You and me together can make this happen. And I'm here to tell you, we need a united front, the broadest possible coalition. So, if you voted for Donald Trump, we are glad that you came. We are glad that you came. You are welcome in this coalition. Same if you voted for Kamala Harris. And look, if you voted for Bernie Sanders, you were right all along. But to realize this future, we need action from all of us, and we need it right now. If you see a protest, please show up and join it. If you don't see one, start one on your own. This stuff is breaking through. It's changing public perception. It's applying political pressure on those in these positions of public trust, and we need more of it. If you haven't decided yet that you're going to run for office, make that decision now. Run for every single position on the ballot, every county in the state, all 254 of them. We got to keep the faith. We got to keep up the fight. We got to match this vision with the action necessary to see it through. Are you all with me? Are we together? Are we going to fight? Are we going to win? It is now my pleasure to introduce a man in whom this vision, ambitious and aspirational, meets a work ethic second to none, Congressman Greg Casar.
Y se baila así.
Buenas tardes, Fort Worth. I'm Greg Casar, and I'm proud to represent the heart of Texas in the United States Congress. And before I give you all the speech that I had prepared for today, I want to say a few words about the news from last night that Donald Trump ordered strikes against Iran without authorization from Congress. Let me start out by clearly saying, under the United States Constitution, the president cannot go to war without a vote of Congress and without the consent of the American people right here in North Texas. It is illegal for Donald Trump to drag us into another endless war. Congress must vote right now on a war powers resolution to make clear that no president can send us into another war in the Middle East. No new wars. No new wars. My entire adult life, politicians have promised quick and easy conflicts in the Middle East. And then year after year after year after year, they send other people's kids to fight and die in these endless conflicts. And like every other member of my generation, I know too many people who came home from the Middle East with devastating injuries, with PTSD, and with people who never came home. No more. Enough. Enough. Fort Worth, Donald Trump promised peace and stability. He has no right to plunge us into another endless war. Donald Trump put a Fox News host in charge of the Pentagon. He has no right to put American lives at risk with his reckless approach. Donald Trump has fired thousands of people who care for our wounded veterans. He has no right to send more people into war who he will not care for when they come back. He has no right. No new wars. 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 So Fort Worth, I am proud that we've welcomed back to our state someone who's always been a champion against reckless wars, Senator Bernie Sanders. Look, there's some people who don't understand or say they don't get why Bernie would fly from Vermont down to North Texas. It's the kind of people who think that billionaires like Elon Musk have bought our state off for good. It's those kind of people who think that working Texans are so divided that we'll never take power back from the rich. People who think this is the best Texas can do. But we know better, don't we? We know better. Look, we're in a state where our president and our governor work for the billionaires rather than their own constituents. Is that the best we can do? A state where working people work overtime, 2-3 jobs, and can't afford the basics, but campaign donors keep on getting richer and richer off government contracts. Is that the best we can do? A state where every Republican we send to Congress campaigns saying they're going to work for us, and then they vote to kick millions of us off our health care to give billionaire tax cuts. Is that the best we can do? Anyone who thinks that's the best we can do does not know their Texas history. Texans won Juneteenth. Texans won Roe v. Wade. Texas birthed Medicaid and Medicare and Head Start and the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And right here, right now, Texas can birth a new kind of Democratic Party that puts working class people first, kicks out corrupt politicians of every party, and saves our damn country. We can do that right here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And let me tell you how I know. Because I didn't start my career in Congress or in a courtroom or in a C-suite. I started out as a labor organizer on construction sites. And you guys know a Texas construction site. 200 guys, black, white, brown, immigrant, and native born, people with all sorts of opinions. But we could work together to agree on at least one thing. The wealthy real estate developer making millions could certainly afford to pay the guys working out in the sun a hell of a lot more. We could all agree on that. But you know, sometimes we'd encounter one of those developers who didn't want to pay. You guys know the type, the kind of guy who tries to make himself feel big by saying things like, "You're fired." And have a cheap spray tan and like to put their name on everything. The type who thinks every working person was put on earth to make him richer. That's all to say, I've seen Donald Trump's type before, and I've seen his playbook too. And when I was a labor organizer, every wealthy real estate developer that didn't want to give folks a raise used the same playbook. He would try to pit native-born workers against immigrant workers, black against white against brown, have us fight each other so the rich could get richer. But our playbook would work too when we stuck together, when we didn't allow him to divide us, when we stood in union. We beat his playbook every time and won better wages here in Texas, better health care, won retirement, better working conditions, and a better life. We won because there's nothing more powerful in American history than working people who refuse to be divided. And Fort Worth, that's how we're going to win. That's how we're going to win. Because Elon Musk does not own our state. Craig Goldman does not own our votes. And Donald Trump does not own our country. You guys do. We do. And it's never been more important for us to come together. Because as we speak, Trump and Craig Goldman and Ted Cruz and John Cornyn are trying to ram through a billionaire budget. You can understand this billionaire budget with just two facts. First, it is the biggest billionaire tax cut in American history. Second, it gets worse. It's paid for by the biggest cut in health care in American history. Here in Congressman Craig Goldman's district, it would kick 35,000 people off of their health care, just right here alone. Think of that, 35,000 of your neighbors unable to go to a doctor because Craig Goldman's campaign contributors want a second yacht or a third private jet. That's not right. Is that right? We don't need a dictionary here in Texas to know what oligarchy is. It's what Republican puppet congresspeople do every day. They try to make sure the rich get richer while everybody else gets screwed. No more of that. And while they're robbing us blind, they're also ripping families apart and putting all of our rights at risk. We know it here in Texas. ICE showing up at schools and at churches. A man here with legal status getting deported to a foreign prison because his autism awareness tattoo they want to call a gang symbol. A 10-year-old Texan, U.S. citizen with brain cancer, deported away from her doctors because their parents are immigrants. That's not right. If you wake up afraid every day that someone that you love could be taken away from you on their way to work or on their way to school for no damn reason, I want you to know that I hear you, I see you, and we're going to fight like hell for you. Because an asylum seeker did not raise your rent, a Wall Street hedge fund did. Because a dreamer did not cut your health care, but a right-wing politician sellout sure as hell did. Fort Worth, we've got to make it stop. And that's where we all come in. Sure, Senator Sanders will do more than his fair share. Beto O'Rourke will do more than his fair share. We'll do what we can. But we need everybody here in this fight. Because you see, in Texas, everybody that's not a billionaire is getting screwed by their Republican congresspeople right now. Donald Trump won votes here in Tarrant County by lying to people. And our job is to go talk to everyone that feels betrayed by him. So I want to say, if you are here and you voted for Donald Trump, but you're fed up with his billionaire first policies, you are welcome here, and thank you for being here tonight. And everyone here tonight can go do exactly what Bernie and I are doing. Go and talk to people. So let's do one exercise. Raise your hand if a coworker or a family member or a loved one you know voted for Donald Trump or sat out the last election. Keep those hands up. That looks like thousands of hands. Keep them up. Now, if the person you're thinking of happens to be a billionaire, put your hand down. But if they're not, put them up, hold them up if they're not a billionaire. Oh yeah, it looks like all the hands are staying up. The person you're thinking of is getting screwed over by Donald Trump right now. You have someone to talk to if your hand is up. We don't have to go talk to them on the most hot button issues. Talk to them about the biggest thing that matters. Billionaires are getting a tax cut while they're getting screwed over. That's what we can go talk to people about. That's how we bring everybody on board. That's how everyone here is an organizer. That's how we win. Are y'all ready to win? Are y'all ready to do it? Now here comes the last part of my speech, and I think in some ways the most important. After we defeat Craig Goldman and Greg Abbott and John Cornyn and Ken Paxton, after we're done with that important business, after we're done with that, the Democratic Party cannot leave behind working class people in Fort Worth ever again. Ever again. Once we've run them out of office, first order of business, we raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $17 an hour, period. Second order of business, we raise taxes on billionaires to cut housing costs, to cut the cost of health care, to cut the cost of child care. And we invest in great jobs and great schools right here in North Texas. And you know how these sellouts talk about the end of Social Security? Well, here's something you need to know. If we passed a law so that the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world have to pay the same tax rate into Social Security as a school teacher, then we could save Social Security for generations to come, and we can have it expanded so we pull every senior out of poverty in our country forever. And the young people here wouldn't have to send a check to their parents to keep them alive. How's that sound? And now another radical idea. Instead of politicians getting elected to pick on gay Americans or immigrants or women, how about we expand people's rights? What if we give everyone the right to reproductive freedom? How about that? Everybody the right to time off to raise their kids. Give everybody the right to a union and a living wage. Give people a right to a pathway to citizenship. And here's how we make it all stick, which is we have to be different than the Democratic Party of the past by doing this: getting big money out of politics. We make it illegal for politicians to trade in stocks. We ban super PACs. We get corporate money out of elections. And we make it so that lobbyists don't get to pick politicians. You get to elect and unelect your own leaders. It's not going to be easy. People are going to tell you to give up. But there's one man who's never given up. He's been consistent year after year after year. He's never given up on that long road. It's my deep honor to bring up a man who has been paving this road for all of us, who saw the need to take on the billionaires before they were running Trump's cabinet meetings. He's our champion for working people, our champion against the cruelty and the corruption, our champion and warrior for peace, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Power to the people! 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 Power to the people right on! Say we want a revolution!
Thank you, Fort Worth! A lot of people here tonight. Let me thank the MSB Choir, Old 97s for their music, the Beto O'Rourke, the AFL-CIO First Vice President Ernie Moran, Pauline Mims, Brian Bryant, an old friend of mine and yours, Jim Hightower, Kendall Scudder, Beto O'Rourke, and the great leader of the Progressive Caucus in Congress, Greg Casar. And let me start off by making a very simple statement, which is factually correct. The future of American politics rests in Texas. As goes Texas, so goes America. And you can do it. As Greg and Beto have indicated, for too many years, the Democratic Party has turned its back nationally and in Texas on the needs of working people. Let's go out, let's change that. Now, this event is part of our Fighting Oligarchy tour. And tonight, I surely am going to talk about oligarchy, but given the events of yesterday, I would be remiss if I didn't, in a few minutes, say a few words about Trump's illegal, unconstitutional attack on Iran. But before I get there, let me say something about where I see our nation today. And what I'm going to tell you is not something you're going to see in the corporate media, and it's certainly not something that you're going to hear talked about very much on the floors of Congress. And the good there is both bad news and good news. And the bad news is that, in my view, our country today faces more serious crises than we have ever faced in the modern history of our country. I wish I could tell you, especially for the young people, to tell you that that is not the case, but it is. And what's even making it worse is that we have a president who almost every single day goes out of his way to undermine our values and the needs of working families. But here is the good news. The American people are standing up and they are fighting back. Our Fighting Oligarchy tour has now done 23 events in 15 states. And we have brought out well over 270,000 Americans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. And just last Saturday, as all of you will recall, there were no Kings rallies in every state in this country. And millions and millions and millions of people stood up and said loudly and clearly, we will not accept oligarchy. We will not accept authoritarianism. We will not accept kleptocracy. And we will not accept legislation which gives massive tax breaks to billionaires and cuts programs that working people desperately need. Let me cut right to the chase, and that is that right now, in America, we are living in an oligarchic form of society, and our democracy is being undermined. Never before in the history of our country have so few people had so much wealth and so much power, economic power and political power, and together we're going to change that reality. Today, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had, if you can believe it. One man, Mr. Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of American households. The top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 93%. CEOs of large corporations now make 350 times what their workers make. Brothers and sisters, that is not what America is supposed to be about. But it's not just income and wealth inequality. Today, we have more concentration of ownership in the economy, sector after sector: agriculture, transportation, financial services, media. You got a handful of large corporations owning that sector, charging us the prices when we go to a grocery store that they want. We got to start breaking up those huge corporations. Bottom line is that today the people on top have never, ever had it so good. But it's not just economic power. It is something that we absolutely do not talk about enough. Greg touched on it, Beto touched on it, and that is what kind of political power the billionaire class has. Look, democracy ain't complicated. It's a very simple form of government. You get a vote, I get a vote. Majority wins the damn election. And what elections are supposed to be about is, if you want to run for office, and I hope that many of you will, but if you want to run for office, you should not have to go begging to some bloody billionaire for campaign funding so that you could win an election. Today, tragically, the billionaire class, the oligarchs, have enormous political influence over both political parties. And Donald Trump has been very clear about that. He doesn't hide it. Do you remember, some of you may remember Trump's inauguration. I was I don't know how it happened, kind of pushed to the front row, kind of where these guys are. I'm standing a few feet away from Trump. If you will recall, right behind him, in plain vision for the world to see, were the three wealthiest people in our country. Remember that? Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos. He'll be offended. He's doing a $20 million wedding in Venice today. And he got there in his $500 million yacht. Oh, my goodness. And Mr. Zuckerberg was there, too. But that's not all. Behind those three guys were 13 other billionaires who Trump had nominated to run major federal agencies. Now, one should remember what you learned in the 6th grade. All right, think back. 6th grade civics, American history. You remember Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg? Remember that? So Lincoln goes to Gettysburg a few days after this horrible battle where thousands and thousands of soldiers died to end the abomination of slavery. Okay? So Lincoln goes there and he's on the battlefield. And he looks around him and he says in so many words, "Those brave men did not die in vain. They died so that we can establish in our country a government of the people." That is what we believe in, and we're not going to let Trump take that away from us. Too many people have fought and died to defend American democracy, and Trump is not going to take that away from the American people. But let me tell you how money in politics works, because it's not talked about terribly much in both parties. For a start, Mr. Musk spends $270 million to get Trump elected. Got it? So Trump says, "Thanks for the $270, you got me elected. I am now going to make you the most powerful person in government." Musk goes running around Washington, D.C., laying off people at the Social Security Administration, at the Veterans Administration, ends USAID, which keeps millions of people alive. But it's not just Mr. Musk. Right now, and this is really, again, quite unbelievable. Right now, if there is any Republican member of Congress who wakes up one morning and says, "You know, I think maybe it's not a great idea to give massive tax breaks to the rich and cut programs that my constituents need. I'm not going to vote for this terrible reconciliation bill." If anybody were to do that, the very next day, Musk or Trump would say, "We are going to primary you and throw you out of office." Just today, there's a guy named Mr. Massey, who I am not familiar with. I think I've never met him. He's a congressman from Kentucky, a very, very conservative congressman, completely opposed to my perspective. We differ on everything. Yet, Mr. Massey apparently has read the Constitution of the United States. And he has been public that Trump has violated the War Powers Act, doesn't have the authority to. And just today, for his crime of defending the Constitution, Trump announced that they are going to primary Mr. Massey. In other words, you know, there was a time, and I'm old enough to tell you this to be true, there were independent members of Congress. They stood up and they said, "Look, I'm here to represent my constituents. This is what I believe. You don't like it, tough luck." But that is not the Republican Party today. If you stand up in any way to Trump or Musk, they are going to try to defeat you politically. But I wish I could tell you it's just the Republican Party. It is not. All right, now let me tell you something else. In my view, what the Netanyahu government in Israel is doing is absolutely horrific. Right now, what they are doing is literally starving Palestinian children in Gaza. And I brought forth two very simple resolutions which said basically, given the fact that the Netanyahu government is breaking international and American law, we should not provide them with one nickel more in U.S. military aid. This is not a radical resolution, yet I can only get 15 votes in the Senate on one and 16 on another. Now, why is that? Do you think it is because members of the Senate feel good about children in Gaza starving to death? They don't. You think they don't know what's going on? They do. But they understand that if they stood up and said, we're not going to give another nickel to the murderous government of Netanyahu, you know what happens to them? The next day, Democratic super PACs like AIPAC say, you're out of here. And that is why, in my view, there is no more important political issue than ending this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It is not complicated. In America, our democracy means one person, one vote, not billionaires buying elections. So this small group of oligarchs who control our economy, control much of the media, control much of the United States Congress. What kind of economy have they created? Well, obviously, they have created a great economy for them. The truth is, the people on top today have never, ever had it so good in the history of our country. But as all of you know, while the 1% are doing phenomenally well, tens of millions of families in Texas, Vermont, and in every other state in this country are struggling to put food on the table, struggling to pay for outrageously high rents and housing costs, struggling to pay for health care, struggling to provide the basic needs that their families have. And here is again a reality that we don't talk about very much. You live right now in the richest country in the history of the world. But in the midst of all of that, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Do you all know what that means? I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. I suspect many of you are living paycheck to paycheck, correct? What does that mean? It means you got no savings. What else does it mean? You can't afford rent. What else? Can't afford health care. What else? Can't afford to take a vacation. What else? You can't afford to put any money in the bank and save for retirement. What else? All right. And on it goes. But here is the point that we don't talk about. And that is, if you are in a family, the majority of American families that are struggling every day and worrying about how you're going to feed the kids. What happens if my mom, my dad gets ill? We can't afford the prescription drugs. I don't have enough money to take them to the doctor. If, God forbid, there's an operation, our family's going to go bankrupt. What happens if my car breaks down? Right? My car breaks down, costs $1,000 to get it fixed. You know, most families in America don't have that $1,000. And what happens? You can't get to work because your car broke down. You get fired. And if you get fired, you got no income and your family is in deep doo-doo. That is the reality facing millions of families. And at the end of the day, you know what all of that stress does? What does stress do to people? It kills them. It does. This is not just rhetoric, it's what doctors tell us. Stress day after day about how we can survive impacts your body, your cardiovascular system, impacts your mental health. And here is the sad reality. As a nation, we are now living 4 years shorter lives than other wealthy countries. Our life expectancy is lower. But what is even more shocking is if you are working class in America, you will have a 7-year shorter life than the 1%. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, all of that economic stress, it's not just, oh, I don't have a great car, oh, I don't live in a fancy house. That economic stress is killing people in the richest country in the history of the world. Today in America, half of older workers have nothing in the bank as they face retirement. You got that? People have worked their entire lives. 60, 65, they got nothing in the bank. 22% of our seniors are trying to get by on $15,000 a year or less. 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country. 800,000 Americans sleep out on the streets, and 20 million families spend half of their income on housing. Millions of kids can't afford to fulfill their dream of a higher education. Brothers and sisters, this is America. This is the wealthiest country in the world. We must not allow that to continue happening. And our job is to take on the oligarchs and to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. And as bad as all of that is, if you can believe it, what Republicans and Trump are proposing right now is a reconciliation bill, Trump's big, beautiful bill. This bill would give $650 billion in tax breaks to the 1%, $400 billion to large corporations in tax breaks. And to pay for it, they're going to make massive cuts in Medicaid, nutrition, and education. You know, I don't know how people could sleep at night by voting for a bill which gives $200 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2%, and then takes food, literally, out of the mouths of hungry kids. This is immoral, and this is disgraceful. So, brothers and sisters, we have got to do everything we can to fight Trump's agenda, but we have got to do something else. We need to go on the offense and offer an alternative vision for this country as to where we want America to go. And at the top of that agenda at this moment is to say no to the Netanyahu-Trump war in Iran. Let me just tell you a story, if I might. Back in the mid-1960s, I was a young man. Yes, I was young at one point. And at that point, the American government, then under Democratic leadership, lied to the American people and took us into a terrible war in Vietnam. Now, I know a lot of young people might not be familiar with that war, but the American people were lied to about what South Vietnam was doing and so forth and so on. And we went into that war. In that war, 58,000 young Americans died, and over 300,000 were wounded. The Vietnam War devastated my entire generation. It will never leave my mind, because those were my friends, people my age who went off to Vietnam. My wife had a couple of good friends, went off to Vietnam, never came back. And for those who came back, it's not just 300,000 who were wounded. Many of those came back wounded in spirit, in mind. They were devastated by what they saw. They came home to a country that was divided because many people opposed that war. And that war not only caused so many American casualties, it killed millions of Vietnamese, and it brought instability to that entire region. And the result of that is a crazy group of people called the Khmer Rouge rose to power in Cambodia and waged a genocide in Cambodia, which killed over 2 million Cambodians. The cost of the war to the American taxpayer was many, many hundreds of billions of dollars. In other words, a lie caused massive, horrible death and suffering. That was what my generation went through in the 60s. And then years later, in 2002, I was a second-term member of Congress from Vermont, just elected to the Congress. And we heard the rhetoric in 2002 get stronger and stronger about the need to go to war against Iraq and its leader, Saddam Hussein. We were told by all kinds of people in the establishment and much of the media that Iraq was building weapons of mass destruction, and that if we did not act quickly and decisively, nuclear weapons would be dropping on America. And I want you to hear this, because this tells you a lot about what's going on today. Among those back in 2002 who told us that we had to go to war in Iraq was none other than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. And this is what, and I quote, this is what Netanyahu stated in a congressional hearing, and I quote, "There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking nuclear weapons. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations," end quote. Netanyahu. Now, President George W. Bush at the time, he said, quote, "Saddam's regime is seeking a nuclear bomb," end quote. And he argued for a preemptive attack, saying, quote, "We cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun, which could come in the form of a mushroom cloud," end quote. The United States Congress, against my vote, went to war in Iraq. And we became involved in a terrible regional civil war there. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found. That war was based on a lie which cost us 4,500 500 young Americans, 32,000 wounded, and trillions of dollars. I will never forget going to funeral after funeral in my small state of Vermont for young men who died in that war. As a result of the war, the entire region was destabilized. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis also died in that war. A few months ago, in terms of what's going on right now, Trump's own director of national intelligence told Congress, this is his national director of intelligence, said, quote, the intelligence community continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003, end quote. The Netanyahu government of Israel started this war with an unprovoked attack against Iran. This is the same government that is currently starving and shooting down innocent people in Gaza. Brothers and sisters, we cannot allow history to repeat itself. The United States faces enormous problems here at home. We should be spending our money and our manpower rebuilding America, not going into a war against Iran. I am not gonna tell you that the fight against the oligarchs and the war makers is going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. They have enormous wealth. They have enormous power. They control much of the media. But this is what I do know. The American people do not want a government of billionaires. They want health care as a human right. They don't want tax breaks for oligarchs. They want the rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. They don't want a war with Iran. They want to invest in our own people. Now, Trump and other demagogues gain power by dividing us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or what our religion might be. Brothers and sisters, let us not allow them to divide us up. Let us stand together. Let's take them on. Let's transform this country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.